this like defensive tackle, T'Vondre Sweat from Texas, his range was all over the place. All over the place going into draft weekend. Sam, what do you think about this?
Well, you didn't just add defense. You added 366 pounds of defense right in the middle.
To go with Latham in the first.
Yes.
That's a lot.
That is a lot of beef.
A lot of beef.
That's a lot of girth.
T'Vondre
Can't
Sweat
teach it.
has comical
It's
size.
look, that's a scouting term. Just let you know.
Yeah, it certainly is.
It's a lot of beef. You watch his tape, and it's funny, right? He actually makes you laugh. That's how large he is when you see him.
Especially with how quick he is.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, particularly when he's lined up at 3-tech and Byron Murphy at 300 pounds is on the nose. It just looks absurd. But the thing is, so at 366 pounds, he's going to get labeled as this like run stuffing, specialist, and the value of those guys is really low. But I think, number one, this draft spot and his tape suggests that he's actually more than that. He can rush the passer. And if you look at his production in college, like his pass rushing statistics are pretty good.
Let's watch the Senior Bowl film here.
There
Look
it is.
at this.
There
Let
it
him
is.
push
There
that
it is.
pocket. By the way.
He can both push the pocket and he can generate pressure with moves. He can be an influence and an impact on third downs, right? So now the question is, how many third downs and just how many snaps, period.
Right, exactly.
But he isn't going to be limited as just this two-down player that's only going to play on run downs. You can play him anytime. The only question is how much can you play him before he wears down and you're simply not getting the maximum impact from him.
Now, I think having Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive line next to him is very advantageous because before you look at this guy and you say, okay, 360 to 380 pounds, whatever the hell he's going to be actually playing weight at. You say, we've got to double team this guy. He's literally just too big that we have to build it around double teaming this guy. You can't do that. You get Jeffrey Simmons next to him. Jeffrey Simmons is going to kill every single one-on-one that you give him. So now T'Vondre Sweat gets those one-on-ones. You get a chance to see a lot of those Senior Bowl footage clips where he's going one-on-one against these guys, and they obviously can't handle his strength when it's one-on-one. So I kind of do like this pairing. I didn't think that he was going to go at the beginning of the second round. And, I do sort of think his size advantage is a little bit overblown in today's football. Like people go, oh, you just put him at nose and like, what are you going to do? You can't run on him. You can't get around him. Well, a lot of teams just run a lot of outside zone stuff anyways. So it's like if he's really a force in the middle that you can't get around, you just run around. You just don't run up the A gap. You just do tosses outside, you do inside or outside zone, you do mid zone, you do things like that where you're just basically running away from him. He doesn't have that kind of pursuit speed. He doesn't have that kind of conditioning to continue to be in a play if you're totally running to the other side of the ball. So I'm a little bit worried about the overall return on investment because of the conditioning and then also how easy it might be to game plan him actually not being a factor.
Yeah, I mean, it really does come down to the snaps, though, because I think he does have the athleticism to play side to side. Like, he's not going to be a sideline to sideline player, but he can play his gaps in any run scheme that's coming against him, right? He's not a guy that's just going to occupy the A gap against duo and not move, right? Like, he actually has the versatility to move all over the place. The problem is, once you start doing all the stuff you talked about, right? Outside zone, get him on the move, that's only increasing the amount you're working him, right? And running him, and potentially reduces the amount of stamina he's going to have for a heavy workload. So last season, number one, best graded defensive tackle in the class last season. Like, that's how well he played overall. Number two, 500 snaps, that was a career high. He's had 2 years with around 100 or 150 more snaps than Jordan Davis ever managed at Georgia. But then I started looking, well, how many defensive tackles in the NFL play more than that? 65 defensive tackles last season played more than 500 snaps, right? And then you start looking at, well, okay, what about big, heavier guys? Michael Pierce, I thought, was an interesting comp, right? Michael Pierce at well over 350. Sure. He played 640 snaps last season, and he's had 2 seasons with over 500. So if they can get him to that kind of Michael Pierce role, I think he's worth this draft spot. If they can't, if he's going to be stuck down, at 350, 400 snaps, then maybe not.
We had this conversation with Jordan Davis a couple of years ago. You mentioned him. He had never played over 400 snaps at Georgia. He goes pick 13 overall to the Eagles a couple of years ago. And at the time we said, of course, the league is playing with smaller boxes. There's 6 men in the box. You need bigger defenders to play the run and cover more gaps. And Jordan Davis makes sense. He played a career-high 561 snaps, so similar to what Sweat played last year at Texas. The bigger question, I think, for me, I think he's a second-round caliber player. I think that makes sense as far as the round. Very good run defender, everything you guys described, but he had a DUI 3 weeks before the draft. right? That was the biggest red flag.
Right.
I thought last year we saw DeJuan Jones, first-round talent, kind of aggravate everybody at Pro Day and not weighing in, and a lot of the same stuff that T'Vondre Sweat did, and Jones fell to the fourth,
Right.
and then became a starter for the Browns, and he's a good player. I thought we might see the same thing for Sweat, so I'm just surprised that we saw him this high
Yeah.
in the second, given everything that's happened in recent weeks here.